Hello, Dirt Road Believers. This is Tina, creator of Dirt Road Believer, and I'm just a swinging this summer. I hope that you have had and are still having a wonderful summer. I'm a teacher, so I get to be off in the summers, and it's lovely. Recently, we traveled to Nantahala River. We stayed down in the gorge right on the river where the boys can fish, and I'm going to share a little video about that in just a second. But pay attention to the part where one of my sons goes out. He's walking out into a field that looks empty, but he's spotted what he thinks is a groundhog. Well, while he's zoned in on the groundhog and sneaking up on it, another set of eyes is watching him, and it's an elk who has a baby that she's protecting. So she starts making a beeline towards him, and he doesn't see. So we're trying to get him back to the car. So that was interesting, but we love this vacation. Actually, my son says this is the least vacation we take, because it's more of a retreat and respite. It's very downtime, not going and doing and finding things that get us all excited. Just great family time on Nantahala River. So enjoy this quick video, and I will be right back with our devotion.
Oh, he's killing himself. Look at my arm.
Oh. You didn't get your worm either.
All I have was with this hook out of him.
You swallowed it.
He's killing himself.
So good.
Oh, yeah.
I got one.
Man, I think I got the smallest trout yet.
And then I see this big thing of water.
Alright, you gotta get it good. Over your head. Oh, we're going like that. 3, 2, 1. I went to it.
Oh, well, she does have a baby. Come and look.
That cow is coming after you.
She's got a baby.
She was on high alert. All right, let's get to today's devotion called Won't You Be My Neighbor? Do you remember the children's television show that was on TV for so many years with Fred Rogers, and it was called Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood? And I have learned a lot about him lately. Fred Rogers appears in Mere Christians. It's binge-worthy biographies that show you how to glorify God in your work. And he made the top, I believe it's 5. Yeah, top 5. And he's in this book, and I've learned a lot about him. And Fred Rogers was an ordained Presbyterian minister. And when you become an ordained minister, through the Presbyterian Church, you get an assignment of sorts, orders to what you're supposed to do next. And usually it's, a church, a minister type job. And Fred Rogers got an assignment that had never been done before in the Presbyterian Church, and it was with the urging and encouragement of someone that he had grown close to, another minister. But he was assigned to go into the TV world and make a difference through TV, ministering to young children. And he did just that, we know, for decades and decades with Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. And there was a period where the show was going to get canceled, and the super fan moms of this show made such an impact and wrote so many letters and had marches and all kinds of stuff that they kept it on. And Fred Rogers was a great example of being a light for Jesus in your workplace. He didn't feel the need to be in the ministry. He felt that his ministry was through TV and reaching children. And he did that so well because he was just himself. And he just talked to the camera as if he was talking to every individual child sitting in their living room. So today, I told you last week, we're going to become a pro at Proverbs in the coming weeks because we have made a lot of connections in the book of Proverbs, or I have. As I went through, I told you this last week when we talked about money. Proverbs has themes that continue to recur throughout the 31 chapters, but they're not all together. You kind of have to glean things throughout the book of Proverbs. So what I've done is compiled these verses pertaining to being a neighbor. And I know we say love your neighbor, and that's kind of like love everyone around you. But we're really talking about neighbors, the people who live around you, and how we are to treat them. And if you have heard any neighbor horror stories, you know that neighbors can become some of the most contentious, bitter, backbiting. Like when you live next to someone that you have burned a bridge with, oh, it is not pretty. And I've heard all kinds of crazy neighbor stories of how they try to get back at each other, and it just goes back and forth, and both are miserable. So King Solomon, wisest king who ever lived, is going to teach us something about how to be a good neighbor. Won't you be my neighbor? Let's start in Proverbs 3, and you may want to grab a pen to kind of jot these down so that you have them all in one place. I did that. So the first time we're going to read about being a neighbor, a good neighbor, is in Proverbs 3, verses 27 through 29. It says, "When it is in your power, don't withhold good from one to whom it belongs. Don't say to your neighbor, 'Go away, come back later, I'll give it to you tomorrow,' when it is there with you. Don't plan any harm against your neighbor, for he trusts you and lives near you." And I think this is a great place to start, because no one intentionally buys a home, rents a home, whatever, gets an apartment near anyone that they think they're not going to trust. We don't seek out people who are, going to do us dirty. You want to trust your neighbor. You buy a home in a neighborhood that you feel like, hey, I can live around these people. I can trust these people. So because, a neighborhood should feel trusting, and we should be able to trust those that we live around, then there are going to be times of need. There are going to be times that the people who live near us are going to need something. And around our house, it's like, oh no, I ran out of sugar. Let me go to the Blackwells next door and see if they've got any. Or, we're cleaning out closets, and hey, we've got something in your child's size, let me pass it on to you, those kind of things. But sometimes there's real need, not just watching out for a neighbor's house while they're on vacation, but sometimes there's a real need. And when it is in your power to do good for that neighbor who is in need, do it. If you have it and it's in your power, do it. And that is echoed all throughout the New Testament as well. All right, let's go now to chapter 11, verse 12. Proverbs chapter 11, verse 12 says, "Whoever shows contempt for his neighbor lacks sense, but a person with understanding keeps silent." We will not always agree with our neighbors. Our neighbors will not always do exactly what we want them to do. Sometimes they're just going to tick us off. But Proverbs says if you are contemptuous in those times, then you just don't have any sense. Because a person with sense is going to think past today. We said wisdom is doing today what's going to make you happy later. It's not always fun or easy. But if your neighbor ticks you off, what's the best thing to do? Wisest person on earth said, keep silent. Because if you show contempt for your neighbor, then you're a fool. But if you are an understanding person, you will keep silent and realize, hey, I don't want to burn this bridge. This person lives right next door to me or right across the street from me. We're going to have to figure out a way to get along. So I'm just going to keep it zipped up. And then the very next chapter, 12, verse 26, says, "A righteous person is careful in dealing with his neighbor, but the ways of the wicked lead them astray." And I know a lot of times neighborhoods will be full of the same demographic. Like, it'll be all retired people, or this neighborhood is suited better for young families. And really, staying to yourself is not a bad thing. Especially, I know, I was raising kids and my neighbor was raising her kids and they'd play together. And I'm sure that she saw things in me that like she would not do with her kids. That's not the way she parented, and maybe I saw that with her kids. But I didn't dare say anything. 12:26 says, "A righteous person is careful in dealing with his neighbor, but the ways of the wicked lead them astray." We want to be close with our neighbors, and we want to treat that relationship carefully. Now let's go to chapter 14, verse 21, and it says, this is going to cut right here some now. "The one who despises his neighbor sins." It is a sin to despise your neighbor, even if you're keeping silent, even if you're not saying anything about it. God reveals the heart, and he looks inside to see what's in the heart of man. And if you are contemptuous and despising your neighbor, even though you may not even be voicing it outside your home, it is a sin. So finding a way, and a lot of times, when we pray, Lord, help my neighbor, help them to be a better person, what we really should be praying is, Lord, help me to see what is my fault, what is the wrong attitude within me, so that I can come around. And he will definitely do that, because he is a Jesus that molds and changes us from the inside out. All right, let's go to 27:14. We've got just a few more verses on neighbors. 27:14 says, "If one blesses his neighbor with a loud voice early in the morning, it will be counted as a curse to him." Blesses. If you just bless early in the morning with loud music, okay, that's great. You may be a morning person. I'm a morning person, but I'm not going to go over in the morning to my neighbors and, good morning. We had a neighbor at the lake. He since passed away. But we had a neighbor at the lake, and he had a bird, the kind that talks and squawks, and it was so loud. Well, you know, if you cover up the bird is not gonna do its squawking and talking. But this neighbor would uncover the bird and start talking to it and feeding it and all that stuff, and it was so loud. We were in campers at the lake, so you could hear everything through the wall, but that was the most annoying bird. So I would add to that verse, if a bird is loud in the morning, curses will come upon it, because we definitely cursed that bird more than once. And you know what we would do? Okay, I'm just gonna be honest, we were contemptuous and bitter towards this neighbor about that bird, because you know what we did? we found recordings of birds that would have been its predator, like enemy birds of this squawking bird. And my husband would put it on Bluetooth on a speaker and play it really loud during the day, and it would get this bird so stirred up, and it would be flapping. I know, that is not what Solomon says to do, right? But later on, as this gentleman neighbor got older and in poor health, he needed help, so my husband would go help him, and we ironed things out. But that bird still gives me trauma every time I think about it. All right, moving on. Let's go to, what was that, 27:14? All right, let's go back a little bit. I skipped one. 25:17. Let's go back to chapter 25:17. I hope you're flipping with me. Seldom set foot in your neighbor's house, otherwise he will get sick of you and hate you. That's pretty straightforward. If you are like the mother-in-law on Everybody Loves Raymond, remember, Marie is over at her son and daughter-in-law's house all the time, and this verse definitely applies to that show. Every single episode, it says, seldom set foot in your neighbor's house, otherwise he will get sick of you and hate you. And that's kind of what happens on that show. Even though it's a comedy, not reality, it really does happen in real life if you're just constantly over at your neighbor's house. Leave them alone. Give them some privacy. All right, 29:5. Unless you're like Friends, the show Friends, they managed to get along, and they were always at each other's houses. Let's end with 29:5. This will be our last verse on being a neighbor. A person who flatters his neighbor spreads a net for his feet. Okay, while flattering your neighbor seems nice, this is talking about insincere praise, okay? Just kind of overdoing it and gushing and saying things that really aren't true, and it's deceptive. And that deception can kind of set a neighbor up for being in a really vulnerable spot where somehow they are harmed. So it's saying, be sincere with your neighbor. You know, don't put on airs and say all this wonderful stuff about them just to get something out of them that you want. That too is a sin. So that's what wise King Solomon has to say about neighbors. And I hope you're a good neighbor. I hope that if you are contentious with a neighbor, that you will forgive that neighbor and try to move past and help, like we did the guy with the crazy bird, the really, really loud bird, early in the mornings. I've enjoyed being with you today and sharing a little laughter and a little neighborly fun. So I hope you have a wonderful day. We're going to revisit Proverbs again next week because you are slowly becoming a pro at Proverbs. Remember, do something today that will make you happy later. That's being wise. Have a great day, and I'm going to see you again next week. Until then, slow down. Take the dirt road. Be later.